Welcome to Life, Lessons, and Laughter with your host, Glenn Ambrose.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. So today I'm very excited. We've got a special guest on. And when I looked at his bio, I was a little blown away. So a very accomplished man, a very nice guy. And we're going to bring him on. His name is Bronson Hill. And here he is. Hey, Bronson.
Hey, Glenn. How you doing, man?
Very good. Very good. So, we just met and you got great energy. We talked for a few minutes and I was already impressed. Which makes me even more excited for this talk. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and then we'll dive right into it.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for having me. That's great. So I was a well-paid medical device sales professional, which means I wore scrubs and I would go into doctors' offices and surgery. I ended up working in heart surgery, very interesting surgical stuff with heart surgery, and would advise the doctors on how to use their devices. And I was making over $200,000 a year, which was great. And but the thing I really didn't have control over, I didn't have control over my time. And a lot of people will say, I want financial freedom, but they don't really, what I wanted was time freedom, right? And I think in the medical field, a lot of professionals and business owners can relate to this. They work, 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. I had a couple of physicians I worked with that worked 60 to 80 hours a week. They were making over $2 million a year each, but they were working and they couldn't take time off. It was very difficult. They didn't get paid if they didn't go to work. And so I think a lot of people find themselves stuck in this trap of like, I work, I'm here, I'm doing all this, and I just don't have time to enjoy it, particularly as Americans. If you live in the US, we work more than just about any country of the world, as a side note. But anyway, so I started to learn. I knew I wanted to do real estate. I had a single family house, started buying single family houses with a family member, and it just wasn't getting to my goal as quick as I wanted to. I wanted to, retire in a way to be able to pursue things that were more meaningful to me, pursue my passions, I write music. I like to write. I wrote a book. I'm writing a second book now, but just the idea of like having freedom over my time. And so I learned about investing in apartment buildings. And I had there's a saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I had another relative come up, say, hey, I've been doing this for years. Why don't you do apartment buildings? And I was like, well, I'd love to, but I don't have the money for that. And he said, well, you can raise the money. So I learned about something called syndication, which is just basically pooling together people's funds to go buy bigger real estate deals or other types of business deals. And so I started raising money. And so having had the sales background, I just started with, a local meetup in the LA area, met my first investor, and then fast forward quite a bit. It raised now about $50 million just from people that are professionals or business owners, either trying to reduce taxes, increase their cash flow, or increase their appreciation over time. And we do it through things like real estate. We also do oil and gas and other sorts of buying private businesses that cash flow really well. And then as we were talking before, I'm on a personal growth journey, right? So I think there's a lot of connection between having a breakthrough in my personal development and having a breakthrough in my financial life or my business life. So I'm really excited to see how those connect with you as somebody who talks about money, who talks about spirituality, who talks about finance and really making the most of your time. So excited to be here.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. It's an interesting journey. We all come in different paths, different doors, and, but we all end up in the same place, so it really is. It's that mind expansion. So like, as you said, it's part of that personal growth journey. So you had to develop new ways of thinking, new ways of looking at things, different aspects of yourself that you needed, probably some things you needed to let go of and some things you needed to pick up. So what's that type of journey for you? What were some of the things you learned?
Oh man, there's a lot there. I think.
Really, I think I just threw too much out there.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good because a lot of times we'll hear people say, "Oh, that's not me," or they speak on stages, but that's not me, or they travel all the time, but that's not me. Or they make millions of dollars, but that's not me. And a lot of times we disqualify ourselves already before, like but it's this thing that we say to ourselves, right? So I think for a lot of us, and for me, the biggest part has just been continuing to create a different person in the future that is bigger and better and more at peace and all those things that I want that are out there. Now, I love the book Napoleon Hill wrote. He's not related, even though they have the same last name. He's not my cousin. I wish he was, but he wrote a book called Think and Grow Rich. And in this book, if you haven't read it, if anybody hasn't read it, it's a phenomenal book. But it says, and it was written almost 100 years ago, maybe 80 years ago. It said, spend 30 minutes a day thinking about the person that you intend to become. And it's like, why is that? Why would you want to spend 30 days just thinking about it? Because when you start to think about it, you start to visualize it. When you start to say it, you begin to start to put those things out there and you begin to become that person. So for me, it was like, I took a 25x net worth jump in my net worth over 4 years. So I went from several $100,000 to about $4 million in net worth in 4 years. And how did that happen? Is there was a lot of this mindset, personal development work to see myself as that person. So if you just think of wherever you're at right now with your income, with your relationships, whatever, for you to go 10x the net worth, or your health is 10 times better or whatever, like that's a different person. So you've got to start thinking like that person. You've got to start acting like that person, and then you'll become that person, right? You can't just snap your fingers. Most people's plan, honestly, to become wealthy, if you ask the most populations, they hope that they win the lottery or that their rich uncle dies, right? That's the plan. There's really no other plan. That's it. And even if the ones that win the lottery, they end up, they don't know how to manage it, so they give it back. So there's this idea of we do have, and Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, talked about this, is that you can't just have the stuff because you don't know how to handle the character. A lot of times you'll find you just won't be able to handle it well. If somebody gave you $100 million, but if you the B, it starts with B. You got to become that person. As Napoleon Hill says, think about the person you intend to become. You become that person internally. You start to do the things that a wealthy person does, or the person that you imagine would do, and then you have the stuff, or you have the life that you want to have.
Right. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's and some of the personal growth stuff is so overlapped. Like I came in really through a spiritual doorway right in the beginning, so a lot of it was spiritual terminology, we'll say, but when I was living it and doing it and implementing it, I realized that it's all just personal development. It's sometimes they use different words, but it's the same thing. And so I remember years ago when I was starting my business, I had one day, I don't know, I just had this idea, and I was thinking about qualities that I respected in other people. And I just made a list of all these qualities. And that was it. I just had a list of all these qualities, and every once in a while I would come up to a situation I didn't know how to handle or something. And I would look at this list and I would be like, what would that guy do? Somebody that had all these qualities, what would that guy do in this situation? And an answer would come to me. It would be pretty clear. And I'd be like, oh, okay. So I would do that. And I really didn't think that much of it. And, I don't know, 6 months went by, a year went by or something. And one day I was walking by my desk and I saw that list and I was like, oh yeah, I don't even look at it that often anymore, but I look at it and I started reading it and I'm like, I'm that guy.
Yeah.
Like, when did that happen?
Yeah. Yeah. It can surprise you, right? You become that person and all of a sudden it shows up. And I think for a lot of people, and I meet people, we meet a lot of people and they're just kind of living, especially getting in your 30s, 40s, 50s, like every day tends to kind of look like the day before. After a while, you kind of have the same job, the same neighborhood, and it just kind of gets to be, what's all this about, right? And you kind of get to feel like, if you fast forward the next 5-10 years, you can kind of see what things are going to look like, barring some tragedy or something amazing happening. And so I think for a lot of us, if we want to have changes in our life, we've got to be willing to change the way we think. We've got to be willing to change the way we act. And it sounds super simple, but that's how people grow and they change. And I think, when we look at it, that it's somebody got lucky, or, most people actually believe my second book, I wrote my first book, Fire Yourself, which is about passive income. I replace your working income with passive income in 3 years or less. In the process of raising $50 million, I've had conversations with over 2,500 high net worth people. So I'm like, well, what are the habits here? What are the things that people do? And one of the things that's really come up is that a lot of people have something around, I call it wealth worthiness, that a lot of times the guy who makes $100,000 a year will just kind of consistently find a way to make $100,000 a year. And the guy who makes $1 million a year will just kind of generally make about $1 million a year. Now, people typically will either stay at the place they're at 100K, or they'll regress, they'll go slightly about the same. But most people make incremental jumps. So they go 100 to 125, 150. They'll kind of make almost like inflation jumps kind of over time through their career. But then you'll see people like myself and others that go from, making this amount to like, now I've 20x something, or something's gone up in a very short amount of time. And how that happens is that you have a different level of worthiness. You feel like you believed it, you stepped into it, you became that person. And it's very similar. It works in relationships too. If I show up to a party, I'm a single guy. If I show up to a party and I see a beautiful woman, and I'm like, I'm going to go talk to her. Before I talk to her, my self-talk is, oh, you're not good looking. She's never going to like you. You have nothing to offer. How's that conversation going to go? Right? It's probably not going to happen. It's not going to go well. If it does, it may not even happen at all. But like, it's the same thing with our wealth and how we approach situations. And I share the story briefly. I had a situation recently, and I shared this before we started recording, where there was a business deal that came around. It was about 5 times the size of my business. It was kind of too large for us, so I thought. But because I'd been doing this work and I'd been becoming this person and seeing myself as that 10x version of myself, I was able to see it. It took me a little time. I was like, oh, this actually could work. And I was able to, we raised $2.5 million for it. This was a $17 million business. It produced, a few million a year in cash flow. It would have brought it, a lot of money. Now tariffs with China has kind of put that on hold and it's changed. And so we're looking at a different deal now, but I really got to where I was able to receive it. So I think whether the deal closed or not, it was a win for me because I was able to step into that from a worthiness standpoint.
Yeah, that's beautiful on many levels. I think for the obvious one that we led into the story with, but also I love the ending. Like you saw it as a win, whether that deal comes. So I believe like one of the foundational principles, universal laws that is out there is non-attachment to an outcome.
Right.
So, what are your thoughts on that? Because you're, here you are, a lot of times people, especially in the financial field, they're very goal oriented. I want to achieve this, and that's what drives them. And they go. Well, if something doesn't work out, which sometimes it doesn't, what does that mean? That you're a failure? That, and obviously you didn't take it that way. And I think that that's an important thing. So what's your take on that?
Well, it's really interesting, Glenn. I had, if you know Dr. Benjamin Hardy, he wrote the book, The Gap and the Gain. He wrote a book called 10X is Easier Than 2X. And he's an amazing guy. But anyway, I interviewed him, and he was talking about this idea of like, how do you be in a goal-oriented, achievement-focused person who's looking at your 10x self? He wrote a book, 10x is easier than 2x. So if you ask people, is it easier to double the size of your business or to 10x? He believes it's actually easier to 10x because you got to let go of about 80% of what you were doing before to become that new person. Versus 2x is you just do twice as much. You're working 40 hours now, you got to work 80 hours, right? So the 10x mindset is a thing. And then this other book he wrote called The Gap and the Gain. And it's this idea that if you're an achiever, you're constantly looking at that on the horizon moment. You've never arrived. Once you reach one mountaintop, you've already got another one, right? And he said that the challenge is if you're an achiever, you're always looking forward and you're measuring the distance from where you are to the ideal and where you want to be. And that leads to discouragement, dissatisfaction, anger, discontentment, all those things. But he said you need to measure, but instead of measuring forward, the gap, being in the gap is how far you're getting, you're not there yet, is turn around and look how far you've come and measure that distance, because I'm not the same person I was 6 months, a year, 5 years ago. Oh my gosh, I've changed in so many powerful ways. I'm a much happier, more gracious person. I'm more confident, more peaceful. Now, not in every area. I mean, there's challenges, but even with challenges like that example that I talked about, the deal didn't close, and it was very disappointing. Emotionally, it was very hard. It was like we raised a bunch of 7 months of our time. We probably will lose, my partner and I, at least 30 or 40,000, and maybe more, depending on the lender giving our deposit back, right, for the loan. So there's a lot of stuff there. But in the middle of that, I learned a lot, right? And now that was a couple of months ago that happened. We just went under a letter of intent, and we got an offer accepted on a little bit of a smaller business, but phenomenal little business, right? So again, everything in life, again, if failure defines you, you're not going to continue to take risks. And I remember that quote by Michael Jordan that's like, I've taken 20,000 shots and missed, and I've taken the game winning shot 30 times and I've lost the game and this and that. And he's like, and I'll keep missing, and that's why I'm successful, right? It's because we keep getting up, we keep moving forward, we keep doing it. And so if everything is just information, everything is learning, then nothing is failure, right? Like, so I think a lot of times we just have to redefine when something happens and what can I get out of this? Where's the silver lining? Where's the lesson? Where's the learning here? Because just because you didn't get the job, the girl said no for the date, whatever, like there's all learnings and things you can gather from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, from my perspective, and I think, yours is a lot more detailed and professional than mine on this subject. But from my perspective, that's one of the biggest things that I've seen with the mindset aspect, and specifically with everything, like you said, even dating and stuff. But with the financial aspects, I mean, it's this worthiness, it's this outlook, and it's how we perceive things. Like, in spirituality, they'll say nothing is good or bad, it just is, and then I see that in the financial world, where people are saying, like, there are no problems, there's only opportunities.
Yeah.
To me, that's the same thing. So it's like, where you see somebody that's successful, then when they see what people perceive as obstacles, most people see those obstacles and they're like, oh my God, this is a huge problem. This is a problem. Whereas the successful people are going, okay, there's an opportunity in here somewhere.
Yeah.
An opportunity for growth, an opportunity for businesses, an opportunity, so even when things don't go the way that they expect them to, they're still moving forward.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that's really, like, I have a men's group, church men's group I with every Tuesday night. We'll meet tonight. We're recording this, and like a lot of the guys, we have different levels. Some people are entrepreneurs, some people having jobs, people are employed. We're just we have 6 or 8, 10 guys, and it's like this mindset piece is so big because it's just, and we all have the tendency, and not that like I came out of the womb this way, or you can, like, we had to learn this, right? You had to continue. It's like a reframe. So you go through something, and like I shared about the deal that we didn't get done, there was a huge emotional loss from that. Like, it was like, oh my gosh, there's a lot here. And I had to continually say, okay, well, let me feel some of the sad feelings here. But then over time to say, well, what is the positive from this? What's the silver lining here? And I think that, having been through a divorce, having in the past, when I was out of college, getting fired from a job that was kind of something that was unfair, I felt that it was a challenging financial situation. Other things have happened in my life. You have to look back and just say, life is not happening to us. It's happening for us. Right. And so you've got to believe that there's something, whether you believe in God, you don't, whatever you believe in, the universe, like, it's guiding you to become the best version of yourself. And there's always an invitation there. And we can miss it if we get bitter, if we just get upset, whatever. But we have to believe that there's someone or something guiding us and helping us to become who we're supposed to become.
Yes, absolutely. It's not a mystery. When, like, how many people did you say you spoke with for your book? 2,500?
Yeah, 2,500, over 2,500. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I mean, that's so beautiful, because that breeds confidence in itself, because it's not just you coming up with this stuff. So speaking with all those people and putting together that book, like we just met, I haven't read the book yet, but I mean, I'm sure that there's some valuable information in that.
Yeah. Well, the second book, I wrote it, Rich Brain, How the Wealthy Change Their Brain to Change Their Bank Account. And then I've had to basically rewrite it because I was doing too much in the book. I was trying to do the wealth mindset, habits, and networking, all this. And I was like, well, let me just start with the mindset, because you don't get the mindset right, like, that stuff doesn't matter. The methods, the tactics don't really work, right? You've got to get that first part right, I think. So, but yeah, I mean, as it's been said, Jim Rohn, the motivational speaker, he would say success leaves clues, right? So if you just follow and watch people that do well, they do really well at this. Most people that are very successful, you just, the more successful you are, the better you have to get at letting things slide off your back, not taking anything personally, realize life is happening for you, not to you. And I see some people get stuck because they think it's about them. Somebody makes an insult, the business project doesn't go well, and now they're a failure. Like, they've redefined things. Instead of this is preparation and growth, they've made it somehow determine their value and their worth. And that's where I think most people get in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And it's, there was a majority of my life where I was broke, basically. Like, you don't know anything about me, but like I was an alcoholic for 20 years
Mm.
and then got sober, woke up
Mm.
spiritually, went and was a father to my son, started my life coaching business, all this stuff. And there was obviously a big change that, everything that I thought just shifted.
Yeah.
So how I interacted with life was completely different. Now, what do you think about synchronicities? Like when you're heading in the right direction and, like life is happening for me with that mindset, and you're really growing as a person and of course you have to put action towards things, energy towards things. So as you're in that flow and you're putting action towards things and you're growing and you're becoming this better version of yourself, do you see like synchronicities start falling into place?
Yeah.
Things
I mean,
aligning?
one of my fundamental beliefs is that, God, and again, everybody has different views on this, but that God is personal and that everything's working together for my good somehow. And so with that, and things don't always go my way. But I'll just say that, man, I have this relationship with God and everything's perfect. It's not, there's challenges. I get, I stub my toe. I say something dumb. I lose my temper, and I'm a parent as well. I have a daughter who's 12, and I'll have to apologize. Hey, honey, son, I lost my temper. I'm sorry. Or, hey, I did this, whatever. And so we don't do it perfectly. Life is inherently messy, and we don't show up. So we show up how we can show up. But when we have the ability to prepare ourselves and realize that we can grow, we can move forward, we can respond to things different. There is a space between, I think it's Viktor Frankl who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. So there's a place between stimulus and response, right? Where you can choose. It's not just like a dog, the bell rings and your mouth waters and you get the food. Like you actually, as a human, have the ability to choose how you're going to respond to something difficult, right? And so I think it's hard to stay authentic there, or we can deny our emotions, or we can be overly emotional or over dramatized. But I think really living life from a place of authenticity. I really love the work of Brené Brown. So Brené Brown, I found her stuff when I went through my divorce, and it was the Gifts of Imperfection is the book, one of my favorite books. So like, how do you live an authentic life where you can own your story? It was hard for me to own my story, to be a 37-year-old single dad, and this to be where I was at the time. Like it was hard for me to own that. But then I got to where I was like, no, this is my story. This is who I am. I'm going to love this person and love where I'm at. And I think just when we can accept and own things and just live authentically, again, it just goes back to that belief that life is happening for us and not to us. And so I have a gratitude practice I do every morning, and it's amazing. I enter in those moments of just when my daughter was born, or when something great happened at work, or when I raised a bunch of money, or whatever the thing is. I do Spartan races when I ran a race and I finished, and I try to live those moments. And so when I do that, I'm kind of priming myself for this continual gratitude, because as humans, we're not grateful for something until it's taken away or it's threatened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody starts really, focusing on health 100% when they have a health scare, right? If they are diagnosed with something serious or a cancer or something. So, okay, well, can you live from a place where you're grateful, not after you have cancer and you've recovered, but before, when you're actually realize that every moment, every second, every day is a gift. And that's the part that is way more important than money, right? How you show up for your family, how you show up for your friends, how you show up for yourself. And so I know with the work you're doing as well, Glenn, that's a big part of it, right? Just really being the person that you want to be and stepping into that. And then, the synchronicity you talk about is believing that, things are happening for us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, it's no wonder to me, getting to know you and listening to you, why you're successful, and more than just successful financially. It's like, there's a very, as soon as you hopped on, man, and I don't even think you said anything yet, and I was like, okay, cool, because we hadn't met, so I didn't know who you were coming on, and I was just like, your energy is just really good, and you take being a father seriously, and you being a good person, and it's not that to me is success. Abundance and finances absolutely should be a part of it. Why shouldn't it? I mean, we live in such an abundant world. Just go count the blades of grass if you don't believe me. It's like there's just abundance everywhere, and I don't believe we're meant to suffer. So like that's a part of it, but it's just that it's a part of it. It's that big picture of working on ourselves and being grateful for what we do have, which brings in more things to be grateful for. And it's just a more enjoyable way to live. It's just 100%. So I mean, I think it's the synchronicity for me is like right now, and I don't know that my audience really knows this, because why would they? But like right now, like I said, I went through that big change, getting sober and finding spirituality and raising my son and being a good person and my business. And I didn't realize this until, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago or something, when I rested. I moved to the Dominican Republic and I rested.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, for a couple of years, my business was set where I could kind of put it on autopilot and work with people, but have a lot of downtime. I just felt I needed to rest, and I took that time, and a lot of self-reflection. And when I looked back, I was like, you know what? When I created my business, I could see specific decisions I made that it was for a specific purpose. The purpose for my business was always to do what I loved, to help people, and to take care of my son and I, to be able to give us a life together, because I was a single dad. So it was, navigating that single dad life. And right when I was starting my business, I ended up with sole custody. So now I'm 24/7. His mom had stepped out. And now I'm full-time parent, not part-time, starting a business. And all the decisions around my business were made for it to fulfill its purpose, which was to just, like I said, do what I loved and support a lifestyle for me and my son. Now I've got that urge. And a lot of my audience knows this. I've got that creative urge is bubbling up, So now I'm leaning into my next. Now, who am I going to become next? And I'm right in the midst of that journey right now. So the timing for this call is just perfect for me, because now I'm going, okay, I'm in the middle of this huge land deal. And here I am talking with somebody that's, like really well-versed in real estate, and I'm literally in the midst of going through what you're describing. I'm becoming a new version of me. The financial aspect is a big piece at this stage of my life. And I'm becoming completely new person. I had conversations today that stretched me and grew me around this big land project here in the Dominican. So it's beautiful, because here I am talking to somebody that's been there, done that, and grown in those areas. So, and I know I'm not the only one. So for the people listening, what are some tips or tricks or things that have worked for you to really, other than the things you already mentioned so many good things, but what's the best way to become that new you? And is it to get a project specifically and start going after that, or I don't know?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to do it. I think the ways that I've done it and the ways that I kind of teach people to do it is to really clarify what it is you want. A lot of times for me, when I went through my divorce, and I'm 44 now. When I was approaching 40, I was like, I just had this incredible sense of like, life is short. Your life is short. Every year there's this phenomenon that every year and every month it goes faster than the months and the years before. And it's just as you get older, it's like my dad, 73, says the same thing. He's like, I just feel like I'm just out of high school and college. Like, and like I do too. I'm 40, like, but it just happens. So I think there's a few things. One is like for you, you took some time to really, I think just taking time to reflect and taking time for yourself is very important. I mean, it's all we get. Really, time is the most valuable currency, right? You can always make more money. You can't make more time. So whatever age you are, I think it's being grateful for the day that you have, knowing that that's not promised. The future isn't promised, but we've got today. And I think if you can, really get down, some goals retreats are good at this, even just kind of trying to figure out what's important to me. What do I stand for? What's the purpose? So I've got, every morning I read my mission statement, why I'm here on this earth. I read that every morning. I read my goals. I read my values. I value these things. And so why do I do that? It's because it allows me to remind myself what's important to me. So when I show up, I can, if I discourage, say, okay, I'm discouraged, but this is the person that I am. Okay, well, let me feel this discouragement. So it's the centering thing that can guide you through it. If it doesn't work for you, then change it. But the idea of starting with values and what's important to you and mission, because then from there, then you can create worthy goals. If you just try to start, I want $1 billion, but you don't have a sense of mission and goals and you're going to be going for this, and you see people do it. They'll go for the $1 million with everything in them. In the middle of it, they betray themselves, other people, their value, they don't know who they are, and then they get what they want. It's like the famous, the guy's the MVP quarterback of the Super Bowl, and they're like, well, now I did it. What's next? Once you've got. So a lot of people don't think that far, right? So it's really important to think about what you want, and then as you go toward that, you're becoming that person. So Jim Rohn has this great quote, and I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but it's not about achieving great goals, but it's basically the person that you become as you pursue those goals, right? So you become a different person. So when I have a worthy goal, a 10x goal, I may not become, worth $1 billion or $100 million, which are goals about. I'd love to be a billionaire or $100 million, but a lot of it revolves around giving and other things that I want to do with that. But I may never get, but you know what? If I'm focused on these goals because of my purpose, I'm going to get a lot closer than if I didn't have goals, right? I'm going to have something centering there, and I'm going to be kind of focusing. So again, it's not win-loss, like, hey, I made it, I didn't make it. And I guess you can look at that, but you also see, am I a better person? Am I more grateful? Am I more, it's been said that people in general, you're going to be stressed in life, whether you have big goals or little goals. So I was like, well, first I'm going to figure out how to deal with stress. And then secondly, I'd rather be stressed over big things than little things, right? Than like what the neighbor's doing or something. And, so when people get older, they tend to complain about the neighbors. Yeah. It's like nothing. They just live in their house all the time. Oh, the neighbor did this, or the gardener or whatever. It's like, well, that's because your world is small, right? You've got to continually expand your world. But I would say start with a place of what you want, figuring out what your goals, your mission, who you are. That's the most important thing. And then from there, then you can layer on, hey, let's do some of these 5x, 10x type goals and put them on top.
Good. Yeah. And that, do you, as you were describing that, I was seeing that it seems like knowing who you are and being clear on your values and who you're becoming really helps you, one, probably fine tune your vision, because it's going to be more in alignment with who you want to be. And it's also probably, what I'm finding now is it's helping me make decisions in certain scenarios.
Yeah.
Because I was having a conversation today, and we're talking about possibilities for this land project, and we went down one avenue, and I was seeing all these problems and all these headaches, and I said, I'm not doing that. and somebody said, well, yeah, but this is a great stream of revenue. And I said, I understand that, but the headaches that come with that revenue is not worth it. I'm just leaning into this. So I know things are going to become 10 times more complicated than they seem right now. So I don't want to start with something complicated that looks like it's going to have a bunch of headaches.
Yeah, totally.
Because then it's going to be 10 times more what I think it's going to be, so I want to start with something really simple and basic, and because 5 years from now, when I'm sitting here on my beautiful piece of land in the mountains of the DR, and I'm, and I'm chilling, and I'm going, wow, that was a heck of a project. And I don't want my phone ringing off the hook because, somebody has a leak in their roof.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. So, what you said really made a lot of sense, because it helps you make, if you have that clear vision and know who you want to be and what you're trying to design, then it makes those decisions along the way a lot easier, because you're designing not only a way to make a lot of money, but you're designing who you're becoming too. So if you don't want to be stressed out, don't make business decisions that are going to stress you out.
Yeah. Well, this is like life design, fire yourself. We talk about this as well. It's like, I want to travel. Last year, I traveled 6 times internationally, right? I went to Nepal and India, did the base camp of Mount Everest, went to Portugal, Ireland, Mexico a couple times. Like, but that's the life I want to live. So I'd rather make less money and do that and have a business that actually, when I go, things keep functioning. Like, like I'm basically, my unashamed goal is to own everything and operate nothing, right? Because I don't want to be an operator. I'd rather be teaching people about finance, writing information on that, finding good deals and partners and putting people into those. But people have to get very clear on what they want from a financial level. So we'll talk to people, as your goal. What is your goal? And they're like, I don't know, more money. I said, what does that mean? Does that mean long-term wealth? Does that mean cash flow? Those are two different things, right? Long-term wealth is a lot of money one day. Cash flow is like this month, this quarter, there's money coming in. I love cash flow because that's how people retire. They leave a job. They have the ability to be able to do it. Or if people are paying more than $100,000 in taxes per year or $50,000 in taxes, there's tax strategy. There's investments you can do, like oil and gas, that actually reduce your taxable basis, right? So finding out what your goals are. So whether it's financially, and even that ties into like, what do I want to be doing with my time? What do I want to be the next 10 years or 20 years to look like? And not just like what I want to do, because somebody can say, I want to live on a yacht and eat, drink Mai Tais every day. Well, that's great, but where's the purpose in that? Where's the meaning in that, right? So you're doing something, Glenn, that you're impacting people's lives because you find this is super fulfilling to you. You could focus just on things with your family and, be it in the Dominican Republic, and focus on things that are important in the land deal. But like, you have decided you want to give your life to help people, and that provides incredible meaning for you and part of your purpose, right? And so I can tell it about you. Right. And for me, I have my own thing. I have my own people that I impact, and want to be a great dad, and want to be a good neighbor, and impact guys and, young guys that are in my faith community. And so it's like, those are things that are meaningful to me. I want to end modern day human slavery in the world, which is a big one, right? There's 20 to 40 million human slaves today. And that's a big why for me. So those are big drives. But I think until you can get really clear on those things, it's really hard just to stack something and be like, okay, I want to buy a jet or a yacht. It's like, well, what does that allow you to do? Like, what's the why for that? Okay, you want all your friends to think you're cool, or you want to have a cool Instagram page. Well, that's not enough, like that's going to fizzle when you are tired and you're not getting there as fast as you want to. But when you have a good purpose and a sense of why, it doesn't matter how long it takes. It doesn't matter if it takes a month, a year, or 10 years or more, because you're committed to the process of getting there. And it's a worthy goal, right? It's not just a goal, it's a worthy goal. So I think there's a big difference between those.
Yeah, that's it. That's, to me, what you're talking about is substance, which I love. Like that's, I try to fill everything with substance. It's just that meaning, purpose, and it's so much more powerful. Yeah, it really helps you with the follow through too. When you have that good why, like you were saying, when you've got that good why, it's when you start hitting those obstacles, all of a sudden it's worth putting in the extra effort to find your way over or around or under that obstacle, because you've got this purpose that's larger than you, that's pulling you, so it's, I think
this is why I've started. Some people ask, I do these Spartan races. I don't even know what a Spartan race is. Glenn, have you seen these?
Spartan, yeah.
They're like a tough mudder. Yeah, you've done one, yes. And so people ask, like, why do you pay to go get punished and beat up and go run under barbed wire and climb and do heavy things? I just went at Big Bear, which is a mountain here in California, where I'm running up and down the slopes that you ski on, right? So you're like as fast as you can, and it's at 7,000 to 8,000 feet of altitude. And it's really hard, but when I finished, I felt so accomplished, right? So I'm not a masochist. I don't just like pain for the sake of pain, but it's like I love what's on the other side of that, right? So if you can find something that's really worthy for you, and that's even these things that are mindset. I think there's mindset things around that. Doing something difficult, doing a cold plunge. I do cold plunging periodically, which 40-degree water for 5 minutes, right? You get used to it, but it's doing the hard thing. And then what happens is other things that were hard before, like if I have to have a hard call with an investor, or we got a business deal that's struggling, I can be like, you know what? This isn't going to be as hard as sitting in the cold plunge for 5 minutes, right? I mean, that was way harder. So again, it's all how we set ourselves up. And then in my mind, subconsciously, I'm saying, I'm a person that does difficult things. I choose to do hard things that are rewarding. And so therefore, these other things that are difficult, I'm a person that does those things. So, this is a little bit kind of can-do stuff, but Jim Rohn, the motivational speaker, he also said this. He said that if something is hard, if it's hard to do, it means you can't do it. But if something is easy, it means you can do it, right? And so if it's hard, you cannot do it. But if it's easy, so if you define it that way, it's like if it's hard, you can't. There's very few things that are hard that you cannot do it. But there's a lot of things that actually become easy when you think, well, I can do it. It's just going to be work. So you just it's a lot of these are just little like mindset reframing type of things,
Yes. Yeah. I'm with you, man. I'm vibing with everything that you're saying. It's just like I'm getting all these flashes, and it's like yes. Yeah. It's I remember when my son and I, I raised my son in Rhode Island, and I had always wanted to, he was born in Florida, and I like the warm weather. I always wanted to move back down, and we would go visit some friends down there every year. And he decided to do his senior year of high school down in Florida for in-state tuition for college, because he wanted to go to college down there. Now, picking up after your whole life in little towns in Rhode Island, moving down to Florida to do your senior year of school in these gigantic, and I mean, the school was, I don't even remember how many students, but it's like equivalent of going from a school with 300 students to a school with 3,000 students, and so it was a big change for him. And I was talking with my mom about it, and I said, he's going to do that. And she was like, oh my God, like he can't do that. And I'm like, well, I'm not making him. It was his choice. I told him I'm fine staying here another year while he finishes school, but it was his choice. He wanted to do it. She's like, well, yeah, but it's going to be hard. And I said, yeah. And she's like, I said, so? And she said, well, then he shouldn't do it. And I says, well, no, I said, that's not how I raised him. I didn't raise him not to do something because it was going to be hard. Mm-hmm. I raised him to do whatever he wanted to do. And if it was going to be hard, then I'll walk with him through it. Yeah. Totally. And she's like, yeah, that's true. Your family loves you so much that the fear bubbles up sometimes at first. Family, friends, close friends. And, I guess that's actually a good thing I want to touch on before we go, if you have time. Is, that when you talk about things, especially big things, there can be a lot of fear coming at you from the people you love. There can be a lot of devil's advocate coming at you from other people in business. We're going, oh, watch out for this, watch out for that. And a lot of times I found in business, a lot of times they're actually doing that to help you, not to tear you down. But when you're under the gun and people are just drilling you with questions and stuff, sometimes it can be a little off-putting, like, hey, why are you challenging me on everything? And to me, I think you have to remember that it's like, no, if you can't handle somebody asking you a question about a difficult situation, how are you going to navigate a difficult situation?
I think people, they care about us. They don't want to see us suffer. It's interesting, you do have to be careful who you listen to when you have big goals and dreams. I remember I wanted to leave my job, and I was making more money in my real estate and my investing career than I was in my medical sales job. And so, but my family was like, oh my gosh, why would you leave your great job? It was, big up 200K. I was working like 30 hours a week. And it's like, why would you leave that job? So almost all of them were saying no. And so I just kind of held on for a little while longer. And then I got in a room full of entrepreneurs that were more successful and wealthy than me. We met together for a year or just over time. And then I presented one time, I just say, hey, I really want to leave my job. Here's where I'm at. And I presented how I made money and where I was at when I did medical sales. And without exception, there were 7 other guys that every single one of them said, you should leave your job pretty much as soon as possible just to go do this full time. And they said, like, if it doesn't work out, you could always go back. And I was like, huh. I think, it's like in my mind, it wasn't like that. It was like either go or don't. What if I fail? And it's like, if it doesn't work, I can always go back. So it's like they reframed it for me. But there's this saying, Glenn, that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. right? You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow in any area, your wealth, your career, your health, your spirituality, you've got to get around people more spiritual, more wealthy, I want to be in rooms where I'm the dumbest person there, or I'm the poorest person or whatever, because that's going to lift me up. Their afterthoughts are going to speak to me. Sometimes you have to pay to be in rooms like that. We run a mastermind for high net worth investors that are typically 2 to 10 million or higher. And it's like, they get a lot just from being in the room with each other. So we just put the room together, right? So I pay to be in rooms and masterminds, other entrepreneurs and things. And so I think that you do have to be very careful who you share your dreams with, especially if you're wanting to make those big jumps, because people care about you. They don't want you to see you suffer. But I look at it like weight training, resistance training, right? It makes you stronger, right? It's hard in the moment. Lifting those weights is hard. I did some lifting. It was really hard. But like the neighbor said, "Oh, that doesn't look like fun." And I said, "It's not." And I told him, I shot across the street because I have this 60-pound slam ball now that I'm just it looks like a light one, but it weighs 60 pounds. I'm lifting up on my head and all this stuff. And he's like, "Oh, it doesn't look like fun." I said, "Well, it's not fun when you're doing it." But he said, "Afterwards, you feel great." So again, you have to reframe it, because not everybody understands, why are you doing that? Why are you in your front yard lifting a slam ball? That's weird, but you do it because of the person that you become.
Yes. Yeah. It stretches you, and it's that mindset, I was actually a personal trainer. Kind of cut out there for a minute. I was a personal trainer for a lot of my adult years back early on. And I used to have clients, they'd work really hard, and then all of a sudden they'd put down the weight and they'd go, "Oh my God, that was horrible." And I go, no, don't say that. You just did something good for yourself. And now you're giving yourself negative feedback for doing something positive. How long do you think this is going to last? You're going to give up. You're going to rebel against yourself, which I guess is the final thing I'll bring up is the discipline. Like, as you talk, what I'm hearing is there's very specific things that you do in the morning, in the evening, and throughout your life to stay connected, to keep yourself moving and growing in the direction that you want to grow. And there's a certain level of discipline. What I've seen is a lot of people will rebel against that structure because of their mindset of that. They're like, "Oh, I have to make myself do this. I have to make myself do this." And then eventually they stop doing it because of the way they're looking at their disciplines. Yeah. So, shifting the way you look at it and seeing it as a tool to become who you want to become seems like a very important piece. And it seems like you do a really wonderful job with that.
Thanks. Well, working on it. We're all a work in progress. Definitely learned some things, made all the mistakes you can make in that process, but it's all about moving forward and learning. So no, I think that's a big part. And routines help me a lot. I think they help a lot of people to say, I know I could get into that. It's for part 2. We can do another one just on how we show up, and we're so impacted by things around us that we've got to be intentional about setting up things that are consistent, that we can show up as a consistent person.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful stuff. Well, you've convinced me that your books have got to be filled with some great info. So thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's really fun being here. I've got a gift for your audience if you'd like. I would love to give you guys a free gift. So I just wrote a guide. This is more about finance, but it's a guide of my, right now, real estate is not generating cash flow. If you buy a house, you buy an apartment, you're really not getting any cash flow from it. I think cash flow is really what allows people to retire and live in the DR, Dominican Republic, or to go on trips, or to do all these things. So how to do that. So I basically created a report with my 3 favorite cash flow investments right now. So if people want, they can get it for free. If you text the word cash flow, just one word, cash flow, to the number 33777, we'll send that to you. And I just wrote it, so it's fresh for 2025. And I'm really happy and proud of how it turned out. So I'd love to be able to share that with any of your audience.
Wow. That's awesome. Thank you very much. Yes, definitely. Definitely. All right. Well, we got a bonus out of this, people. So that's even wonderful, more wonderful. So it was great talking to you. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm gonna have Bronson's info for everybody. So look below for that. But that's gonna do it for today. Thank you very much. And that will do it.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.